Doing actions. I've been in Europe for 3 years. We've been doing a bunch of global actions with global action, many of them, and grassroots groups from around the world. But this is by far the most exciting and powerful campaign that I have ever been part of. And the reason there is such a disruptive element here. You know, in Europe, the labor unions, maybe in Denmark or in Germany, they may be a little harder to reach about this. But you go to the global south and you talk to the unions, you want to talk about the climate, it's hard to talk about that with the unions. Everyone knows that here as well. But I think everyone also agrees that we need the workers with us. And you know, in Europe, the climate movement is criticized a lot for being very white, very middle class, privileged, and like sometimes you don't have the moral authority to say certain things. Like you told me you did some actions earlier this weekend and they criticize you for one thing or another, but like they're clinging to little details that they wouldn't do that to me, for example, which has confronted Total. And what can you say to a frontliner that is coming from where people are dying because your company is killing them with leukemia and fracking? So the moral authority of the Global South is a very important strategic asset in the global fight for the climate. And I think by far Europe is not taking advantage of it. And I can say it like that, take advantage of it, because we in the Global South need to take advantage of you taking advantage of that. We need to take advantage of your proximity to power, your whiteness, your capacity to have media coverage. We are invisible, we don't matter. But you know what? When you go to Latin America or Africa and you talk to the labor unions about debt, then they listen to you. Because they're really pragmatic, they're really focused on survival situations. So they're talking about food, education, jobs, healthcare, right? And climate is just an abstract idea, except in the areas where they're fighting for their water or their land, where it's a very concrete fight. But it's not a climate fight, it's an environmental fight for them. But if you talk to them about debt, you can build such a broad coalition because they get it. You know, they all want to get out of debt because the debt that our countries are having to pay back is affecting directly their salaries, their livelihoods, their well-being, their families, because they cannot afford food. You know, everything is affected by this. Some of the countries that are in debt have to pay 50% of their GDP. They're losing that just to pay the interest on the loans. So the workers get that. And imagine that we can connect those workers of the Global South with the power of the climate movements in the Global North that so far have been quite disconnected. And maybe it will be harder to connect the labor unions here, to start here with the climate is harder, but what if we build a global coalition with the labor movements of the Global South to cancel the debt? Then, you know, those guys, they have survived dictatorships, genocides, neoliberal governments, and they're still standing and fighting for their rights. All the labor rights and many of the civil rights conquered in the last century, they are because of them, not because of us. So, you know, the climate movement is still at the infancy in Europe. And I think we need to reach them immediately, and nobody seems to know the answer how to do that at a significant scale. Because you can talk to them and they say, I agree with you, yeah. But there's a difference between I agree with you and taking out 100,000 people on the streets with you. And in Argentina and in the Global South, we are beginning to do that because they got it, that we can fight together. It's debt for climate. We come together, they're going to mobilize by the thousands all over the world. In Argentina, there will be many thousands. The third largest labor union is mobilizing there, together with XR, together with Fridays for Future, together with local assemblies, indigenous people, people that follow the Pope Francis message of the Laudato Si, an incredibly broad scope. Like there's the labor union that groups together all the judges of Argentina. Some of them are the ones that made criminal cases against me. And now they're part of this campaign as well, the labor union, not the judges that persecuted me. But, you know, so the scope and the breadth that we can bring together is the only thing that can give us the power that we need to make the necessary differences. Because what can we do otherwise? We just did an action against Total, and it's nice and it's fun, but they don't give a flying fuck about it. And we're not making any impact, guys. We're not making any impact. The possibility of avoiding the collapse is really slipping through our fingers. I really believe the labor unions of the world need to be the spinal cord of the climate fight. And we have found a way to do that. It may not be the only one, but at least it's a first goal, a first way to get there, right? So just that we can connect social justice with climate justice is enough. It's been too long that things have been divided, and we really need to politicize the climate movement about debt and the financial powers that are running our lives and the world, the 1%. This is what they are. And by doing this, we are politicizing the climate movement about financial power, and we are politicizing the labor unions about the climate crisis. And it's not going to be a miracle that in the G7 next week we will win everything. No. It's just the first stage that we're going to be giving birth to this on the streets. And then after that, we have a long-term vision. We really have to keep growing toward COP, really put this officially on the agenda. Fridays for Future around the world are also very supportive. In Munich, we're going to be doing a lot of action with Fridays, XR. The nice thing is that everyone is coming together, and I want to stress this because in Europe, it's not common. And everyone is doing things all the time in different targets, different days, different narratives, different tactics, and we need something that can bring us together. And maybe the Global South can help bring us together because of the moral authority, because these are the people that are fighting for survival, and these are the people that Total and Copenhagen University cannot say anything against, because we have, what are they going? They cannot bullshit us. So let's use them, let's come together, and that's what we're trying to do with Debt for Climate.
Maybe one thing to ask. I think one thing to add. You asked, can we do that? And I think the clear answer to that is just yes, because it wouldn't be the first time. We have to remember that the IMF and the World Bank were created to help rebuild Europe after the Second World War. We need to stop normalizing the existence of these institutions, these really colonially set up institutions. They are not even, 53 I think they were inaugurated, if you call it like this. So it's been 70 years, that's nothing. We have to start imagining a world again without the IMF and the World Bank. And this is just possible. It's just they are 70 years old. But to give like a concrete example of saying like, can we do this? Well, yes, it's absolutely possible. If you take the example of Germany. Germany had accumulated during the Nazi regime the highest debt government ratio, I think it's called, in the world's history. I think it was 607% of the GDP was debt. So, and after the Second World War, it was decided to cut the calculation of what exactly was cancelled and what was cut in half and so on. It's really complicated, but to simplify it, it was cut in half, like that debts were cut in half, more or less. And of course, the reasons for that, we don't want to reproduce a new Germany moment, of course, because the reasons for that was, okay, we need to secure US Germany, we need to secure or create a market for US project, and we definitely don't want communism to take over and to look better than the US or the capitalist model of production, basically, or of society. So this is why then just the US, the IMF and the World Bank, which are European and US dominated institutions, they really pushed forward for this, but also that's why Germany's debt got cancelled, in addition to help from the Marshall Plan. And this is at the basis of the so-called economic miracle that Germany is so proud of bragging about. This is that debt cancellation is at the root of one of the biggest economic power of today, which has the third or sometimes the fourth largest voting power in the IMF. And this is something that they know. They know of the power of debt cancellation, and they don't want that for countries of the Global South. They know what a powerful tool it is to cancel the debt, because our entire wealth that we accumulated is based on this colonial, on colonial exploitation that was possible because we cancelled the debt. The debt was cancelled. It is purposeful underdevelopment. That is the name basically of debt trap diplomacy. It's purposeful underdevelopment. They want to keep if I can quote the Latin American, the classic Latin American, they want to keep the open veins of the Global South flowing towards the north. And this is what debt is doing. It's just keeping extracting for the Global North to the benefit of the IMF, the World Bank, and corporations and government, and the rich classes of the Global North. That's it. It's not beneficial for the people. The people have to work in those mines in slave-like conditions. So I think the question is not only can we do this, because the answer is clearly yes, But the question is, do we have to do that? And also the answer for that is clearly yes, we have to do it for anybody who wants to be serious about mitigating the climate crisis and to implement a society that is based on justice. We just have to cancel that and pay reparation, loss and damage, and get serious about climate financing, because otherwise we're just going on trying to fix nature, but we need to stop thinking that we need to fix nature. We need to fix society and our economic system first.
Woo!
As I mentioned earlier, I think often when we talk about finance and the climate crisis in Denmark, we talk about climate aid quite often, and about, like, it's mentioned that that Denmark, for example, doesn't live up to its obligations to pay its promised climate aid. And as I mentioned, we're critical towards the whole aid narrative because, well, one thing is that it makes it sound like we are the beneficiaries in the global north that are helping out of the goodness of our hearts the people in the global south by giving them these sums of money. And of course it is a problem that we're not paying what we promised that we would pay, but it's such a small amount of money when you compare it to this purposeful underdevelopment that has been going on for so long. So would you care to elaborate a little bit on why we should be more critical towards not paying climate aid, but only talking about climate aid and not taking it further?
Yeah, I think it varies depending on which country of Europe you're talking about, but my understanding is that, and we can look at the reports later, but for every dollar, every euro that some of these countries give to the global south, they are getting 100 in all the other ways that they are exploiting us. So this is an aid that helps more the one who gives it than the one who receives it. This is the cynicism and the perversity of this system. And that's one of the most powerful emancipatory components of Debt for Climate, the campaign that we are running. That is not being run by the European governments telling us what to do, but to continue this colonialism of being the savior. The very people that are destroying us are the ones that are going to save us. This is really perverse. We are doing the campaign from the bottom up in a decentralized fashion, where the goal is that each country of the global south needs to build its own Debt for Climate alliance and powerful movement of unions, labor, climate, justice movement, and so on, so that they can put enough pressure from within, because our governments are not angels. You know, the global south governments are usually just puppets of your corporations of the global north. So like Total, you know, usually Total is more the government than many of the governments of Africa and Latin America. So what we need to do is just change the paradigm. Quit waiting for your government to save the world or yourself, because they are not. They are co-opted by the companies. They are merely a front men and women for the corporations that are typing and giving them the laws already pre-written through their lobbyists. So they just pass them through Congress. They have them all in the back pocket. If you have anyone that is really rebelling, it's not going to last very long. And even here in Denmark, where everyone seems so civilized and so Republican and all this bullshit of democracy that this festival is about, it's just repulsive for me to see how these people are just, the Copenhagen University is bringing these people to greenwash their bullshit and using this space, and frontliners are nowhere to be found, and the people affected by the climate crisis are nowhere to be found, and there's no one giving funding to bring these people here. And how many billions of krone have you spent in this shit? So, I mean, you have to call the bullshit out, and that's what we're trying to do globally with Debt for Climate. We're very grateful to be invited to be speaking here. I think it's good to be in the core of the rottenness of it all, with the good ones, which is you. But that's what we're trying to do, shift the paradigm, and instead of being Denmark saving us with your aid, no. South Africa, Argentina, Namibia will save themselves by getting your knee, not your, of course, but the knee of the European governments off of our neck so we can breathe again. That means debt cancellation. So we need that much more than we need your little aid and little, you know, like tips and stuff like that. And we will only build that when we do it from the bottom up. We're doing it decentralized. So no country in the world can tell another country, oh, this is how you should cancel your debt and use this money for this transition. No, the movements in that country will be the ones to decide that. And the only way to do that is about power. I have news for you guys. This fight is not about the truth. This is not about science. We have the truth on our side. We have science on our side. But look at reality. Total has known since 1971 the consequences of their climate actions. And yet they have been financing misinformation for the last 50 years. And what is happening in 2022 in one of the most progressive countries of the world? The biggest university of your country is greenwashing them in this event. So it's not about the truth, it's about power. It's about time that we understand that what we need to build is power. And the only way to build power is to build coalitions. And when you build coalitions, you don't do it with the people that you like only, because that's not a coalition. You know, it's hard to connect with the labor, and they don't think like us, and they're different culture and so on, but we need to do that, and that's where Death for Climate is helping us do that, and to really change the paradigm. Rather than Europe telling us what to do, each country will decide what to do. The role of Europe is to support us. The role of Europe is to amplify us. The role of Europe is to help visibilize this and hit them in the centers of power, because you have the proximity to power here. We will be in Munich next week. The G7 are meeting there. That's where all the power is. There will be actions in London, in Paris, in Brussels. That's where we need to be, in Copenhagen. So that's how you can help us. You know, put yourself at the service of these struggles, and together we can save the planet and save each other from this crazy, corrupt system that is decaying and bringing us all down with it.
And I think that's a really important point, this whole knowledge that the climate aid, like and aid in general, becomes a new way for the global north to try and control the global south countries, because when you focus on, for example, paying climate aid instead of doing debt cancellation and paying loss and damage and so on, and like giving free resources, you direct this aid into specific things, and like then the global north powers, they decide what that can be used for. And another thing that I think is really perverse about it is that a lot of it, like most of it, is given as loans, so it becomes more debt. Yeah, it's obvious how stupid it is.
I think one of the best cases to show the stupidity of the loans or of the credits and of debt is the case of Haiti. To just give an example of the obvious state of stupidity of it, or of the stupidity of it, is that after the first successful slave liberation movement, which happened in Haiti, where slavery was abolished for the first time, France made Haiti pay reparations to France, to slaveholders, for their loss in capital, basically. And Haiti paid back this debt to the last cent, but it's at the root. This indebtedness is at the root of why Haiti is today one of the most vulnerable countries also to climate change. One of the most hardest hit by that is because the former colonial powers made them pay for losses that they caused. It's just completely incredible, and this is just the most blatant effect of it. It's because we have these powerful narratives of, oh, we're gonna help, and we're gonna aid, and we're gonna give you money, and we're gonna... First of all, it's just empty promises. Also, debt is just a promise, basically, but also climate finances. They have promised the climate finances of $100 billion, I think it was, in currency, and they haven't even lived up to that. So they are not helping. They're not even keeping the promises. Nobody is keeping promises in this government and this system anyway. So we have to stop believing in this idea of helping and of aid and of promises, because they're just crap. They are helping as long as the profits keep flowing towards them. So who are they helping really? They are just supporting themselves. They're not helping anyone. It's a bit like an example of like, okay, so we're gonna push someone from the cliff and then hold their hands and pull them back, and they're like, okay, now pay me please because I helped you. You know, like this is a little bit like that in the climate situation is also. So I think it's very true to just call it stupid and obvious that we have to cancel it, because it's standing in the way of transformation and on self-determined transformation and transition as well. And this is why it's so important what Esteban also said, it's about building power. Because a lot of people will say, like, okay, but so why are you actually giving, or why would you free money for corrupt governments? Well, we are building the power from the bottom up so that you have the people who can take over power and determine their transition by themselves. This is just what we're doing. We're building the foundation for a decentralized, just, and self-determined transition that is not going to be co-opted by corrupt governments. That will also, a lot of them are put into place and helped by corrupt governments from the north, which we have to keep in mind, the history of corruption as well, and also not dictated by colonial institutions like the IMF and the World Bank, and not falling into the trap of stuff like swaps that is just a colonial tool where like global north NGOs and institutions, the IMF and the World Bank wouldn't be the first time, are going to impose on the countries and the people how they are going to shape their transition. And it's just going to be a lot of land grabs, a lot of extractivism, a lot of displacement for indigenous people from their territories, so that we can here greenwash and say we're the good ones, we're helping you. So here you go, please go from the territories because we're helping you, you know. we're evicting you. Say, be thankful for it. So I think that's the rant for your question.
Thanks. So I think we can open up now for some questions in the audience. If anybody has any questions they would like to ask Esteban and Louise. Yeah. So the question is how to learn from the 60-day strike in Sri Lanka.
Yeah, thank you for the question. Well, I think the first thing is to learn that it's possible. Because I think a lot of us we're just disillusioned. Like we're evicted, like we come in and the police is catching us and putting us into the gesa, whatever it's called in Denmark, like the prison, or they're beating us up, depending also where you come from, so on. So it just, and we see that we're coming nowhere because also we're always lacking a step behind. We're always like, oh no, please don't do this. Oh damn, we're like, okay, then please don't do this. Okay, we also fail. And this is just something that can give movements in the global north just power and hope again, to say like it's possible, it's radical to just keep up the blockade. So we need to really think of, okay, how can we make it last? And this is why we're just starting to get in touch with the people and elaborate in contact with the people that are holding this blockade, because we don't have this experience. That's the thing. We tell ourselves this story of the climate movement started in the 60s in Europe. That's bullshit. It started 500 years ago when Europe exported the extractivism to the colonies, or the then colonies. So we don't have this experience of resistance. So we have to stop bullshitting ourselves of saying, well, we lead the movement. No. Like, go there and ask them, like, okay, how did you actually organize? How did you do this? Also, the Indian farmer strike that was happening when was it? Corona mixed up my time thing. So 2 years ago? 1 year ago? They were also able to uphold the blockade for really, really long. And we have to think of, okay, how can we make this possible? And first step is we need to stop thinking of activism as a hobby that we do on the side. A lot of people have to do it because they have to work, to study, and so on, of course. But maybe we also have to take into account, well, to do this, it's a fight for life, it's a fight for justice, it's a fight for solidarity. So maybe we have to give up some stuff. Maybe we have to lose our exams. Maybe we have to think of other ways of supporting ourselves so that we can be able to be in the streets as long as it takes. That's it.
Thanks. Anyone else have any questions? Yeah. The question is about how movements can work together with ministries and governments also, I guess.
Well, I think it's a question that reflects that trust in the government and hope that they could do something. And you're right, because they have the power. They are the ones that sign the deals. They could change things, but they're not. When I see it as a balance, you know, like you have two different weights, and right now it's totally out of balance. Right here you have the powerful 1% concentrated world capital, and at the bottom we have most of the people of the world and the interest and well-being and the future of everyone, and it's not in balance. And the politicians are that balancing act, and they have to respond to who has more power. And right now they are responding, unfortunately, to those that are financing their campaigning and lobbying and giving them nice gifts in some places, some trips and so on. And how can we change that balance? It's back to what I was talking about, building power so that we can even that out and win it. And then, of course, we need to sit with them. Each country will need to sit with their own authorities to push them and negotiate and force them into, demanding debt cancellation. Maybe even we can do some debt disobedience where a lot of countries of the Global South can collectively stop payments. If we do it like 20 countries or 100 countries at once, then the IMF, together with the Global North movement supporting it, we're putting them in a really tough spot. So the answer to your question, to give it fully, I would say also this. I feel we have tried that for the last few years in Europe a lot. And I feel, together with all of you, I think I speak for most of us, there is a lot of exhaustion in the climate movement, a lot of demobilization, a lot of people who are giving up, who are just tired and burned out. And this is a very big, we are all at a crossroads right now. And a big part of this problem is the idea that the Eurocentric idea that the governments from Europe are the ones that will provide all the answers. Unfortunately, they've been the source of most of the problems. And the answers that they come up, like the climate aid and the Total CCS and all of that, tend to be greenwashing campaigns from the companies behind them anyways. So what we need to do, and I think this is where Debt for Climate can help so much, is to bring us back and humanize the climate fight again, because it's not about 1.5. It's not about the IPCC only. And the climate fight in Europe, to me, has seemed always very dry, very about numbers, about statistics, and we need to humanize that. And Debt for Climate has found a way by connecting the Global South and North, the climate movements and social movements, and together we can sit, or you guys can sit with your minister here, and when you have enough power on the streets, you will be in a position to say, we want you to tell your government to vote at the IMF, because Denmark has votes at the IMF and the World Bank. So we want Danish votes there to go toward canceling the debt. Even though Denmark doesn't have enough votes to go alone about it, that would already be revolutionary, because it would be world news that the Danish government has sided with the movements to cancel the debt of the Global South and enable climate action. The last thing I want to say is, here's the hope. The Global South has trillions of dollars of fossil fuels in the ground and trillions of dollars of debt to the Global North. So if we just cancel that off, this could be the biggest win in the history of the climate fight, to potentially leave trillions of dollars of fossil fuels in the ground. So see, the solutions will not come from Total and the University of Copenhagen, but they can be found from the grassroots and from the Global South and from the bottom up. So that's the answer I can give you.
Thank you. Anyone else who wants to pose a question? All right. Then I think before I let you have some concluding remarks, I just want to mention, go back to the action, the G7 actions that you've been talking about. So actions are being mobilized across both Global North and Global South countries. And of course, we want to be part of that in Denmark. So we are organizing an action on the 27th of June in the beginning of the day. And we really hope that, for example, the Green Youth Movement and Extinction Rebellion Denmark will be part of this. And it's going to be a fun action, I think, to be part of, and it's low risk and very legal. So anyone who wants to participate in that, please write me on amanda@globalaktion.dk. But also, I have already talked a little bit to some people in some of the movements, so that's just like a big invitation, and of course there will be more information also out on social media when we get a little bit closer. But just to say that we will also be participating in Denmark, and of course also in the campaign when we move on further. Yeah, so if anyone is interested in also being part of the campaign work afterwards of getting more engaged with this work, they can of course also contact us on Global Action. Yeah, so do you want to say something?
I actually just want to encourage what you just said. Sorry, very good. Very inspiring. No, I just want to encourage really everyone to take part in this actions, because from my experience, being in these kind of global actions, international actions, it really gives you back hope. It really gives you back energy. If we keep on acting in our national frames, which we are doing right now in the climate movement, it's really frustrating to sit on the streets and you already know, like, hey, this is not going to change shit. We're all alone, and I'm going to go home and have a burnout and cry and then go to the next action, and it's just a vicious cycle. But if you're participating in an action like this, I want you, when you're on the streets, you can remember, however small you are, because of whatever reason, because of the repercussion may be really high, because the police might be really brutal, because whatever reasons, I want you to remember that in 28 more countries, people are sitting on the streets and yelling at their politicians and the government and holding each other's hands at the same time. And this is so powerful to get you through the actions, however frustrating they are. You just think of, we are not alone, and no one is left behind. We are all together in this, and we have over 40 actions going on at the same time. In a long-term perspective, it's going to be even more. But even if you're going to participate just during the G7, keep in mind that I don't know how many thousands of people are going to participate, but we are represented on 6 different continents, and you can be part of that. And that's such a powerful feeling from my own experience. It's just really powerful. So sit on the streets together with other thousands of people around the world and just feel this feeling of what it means to organize in international solidarity together.
I can only agree. Esteban, you want to say something?
I think to what Louise was saying, tackling Eurocentrism a little bit. You know that movements here, sometimes Eurocentrism is the idea that Europe has to be the center of the world and the solutions will come from Europe, but maybe it's not true. Maybe not all the solutions will come from Europe. Most of the problems came from Europe. So maybe the people in the Global South have something to offer, and this is a campaign that comes from the Global South. And it's a global campaign, but it's not like a global campaign of XR or Fridays that is decided and then everyone that is already part of it does it. It's the other way around. It came from the bottom up. And then Fridays joined, and Extinction joined, and many groups, but it's organized really, really from the bottom up. And everyone owns it. It doesn't have an owner, there's no organization or movement that owns it. It belongs to no one and everyone, all of us. And so can it to you. And all of you, if you support us, even if you cannot do an action, but just sharing the actions on social media. The Twitter is Dead for Climate, the same for Instagram and Facebook, and just there will be actions everywhere, and you can really help us amplify the messages. And yes, join us, because this is what we have found to give us hope for the future, to break us out of the crossroads that we are in, of the depressive point that we are in as a climate movement. And I think the only way out for the climate crisis is globally, international solidarity, and this is the way to do it. Thank you.